Okay, fam, effective communication. I want to start this discussion out with a disclaimer, okay? And that disclaimer is that this is like in the most ideal world, your conversations are looking and sounding like this, right? I'm going to give you I think like 7 or 8 kind of insights. Will every single conversation look like this, especially as you're working toward being more effective? No. Okay, no, 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 no. And not every conversation calls for all of these things. But I want to give you a high level overview of what effective communication is and what it is not. Because right now we live in a society that is full of ineffective communicators, rampantly ineffective, right? I actually had somebody yesterday tell me they dropped a so this is where it started. Okay, I've seen this for a long time. I have a background as a high school English teacher, so I used to teach writing and communication. And one of the things that people do that's a very ineffective communication tactic is just drop a quote down, just like plunk a quote, and that isn't always a no-no, right? The quote is the star of the show. So I had posted a video on TikTok and somebody just dropped a quote down that I did not understand why they were dropping. So I asked them and I was like, well, why are we putting this quote here in this way? And somebody else chimed in and was like, oh, well, if you don't understand, then it probably wasn't for you, right? They just saw that and felt what they needed to feel. And I was like, that's not how communication works. So that was the first thing, and actually the first two things that came like to my mind about what is going on here. Like the comment section is usually a grand place for ineffective communication. Not surprising, right? It's very reactive. People don't realize that the person who made a video can see the comments, or, there's a lot of weird stuff in the comment section for sure. So that was the first. And then the second thing, which was odd, is I was having a prayer meeting with a friend of mine. And one of the things that the Lord had told us to work on is our tongues. That our tongues are meant to speak life and not death, to worship and to do warfare and to praise Him. And she and I kind of went back and forth, like we feel like we do a pretty good job. So where can we do better? And the Lord showed us some places. And I was like, I see, I see. So effective communication is a very important topic that people are lacking greatly. We don't teach communication anymore or at all. See, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I am kind of assigned to teach the things that we don't teach. You on how to be you, one of them. You on how to communicate effectively, another of them. Now, anytime this happens, I want you to know whatever standard that you think you're held to by my teaching, I am held to a double standard by the good Lord and by myself. So, for this effective communication, when I teach this, I already know my head is on the chopping block. Okay, I already know. And I was making it and I was being rebuked by the Lord in the places where it was like, you're not doing this all the time. Sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. So don't think for a second, all right? If you're watching this, this is for awareness and understanding purposes. These are the things you want to strive toward. I'm going to tell you right now, as honest as possible, I don't do all of them all the time. Okay, so don't judge yourself. Just look at it as a learning tool for how you can have better conversations, okay? So with that very lengthy disclaimer, let's start effective communication. Okay, so what is effective communication, right? That is the first thing. And that was what I was so surprised about on that TikTok comment, that she had implied that someone should drop a comment that I don't understand. Because effective communication is a transfer, a successful transfer of what you mean, what you're intending to mean, and we'll talk about responsibility, being responsible as a collaborative component in a way that builds trust, alignment, and potentially movement between two people. And we're going to cover that, and you're going to see what that means in a little bit, right? Ultimately, it is meant to build bridges, not burn them. Communication is meant to bring us closer, not farther. Does that mean we'll never have conflict? No, of course not. You will always have conflict. Conflict is the spice of life. You're going to have it. Okay, but there's a thing called rupture and repair that most relationships nowadays are greatly lacking. People do not know the art of effective communication. And so, to try to suggest that I'm going to put a comment down that's not meant for other people to understand or relate to is ineffective communication. Effective communication brings people together, transfers your thoughts in a way that someone else can understand, right? It is meant to be understood. Communication is meant to be understood well. It is meant to be clear. It is meant to be concise. The reason why a lot of people don't love the writings of Paul is because it's not clear. It's not concise. He's very circuitous, which is to say circular, goes around and around and around. He is very wordy. He takes a while to get to his points. And as a result, people get very confused by the writings of Paul. You want to have purposeful, intentional conversations. Every word out of your mouth will be weighed against you in the balance. We'll talk about that. So you want to make sure that your words are something you consider greatly. Most people do not. They pop off at the mouth. They're very reactive. And so I will just also back to the point about Paul. Don't forget, he was so long-winded that as he was preaching, somebody fell asleep, fell out of a window, and died. And he had to go bring them back to life. Okay? So we want to strive for effective communication. Less is more. And I used to always say this when I was teaching, a 20-page paper is easier to write than a 2-page paper. It is more difficult to be concise and effective than it is to be long-winded and take your time getting to points, right? So effective communication is ultimately understood by the audience, right? It is less about you and more about the information getting conveyed to the audience. And so this is something that good orators know, good storytellers know, and most lay people do not know. Okay. And so with that overview, let us get into it. What effective communication looks like. Point the one. It is clear, not necessarily clever. Okay. You will see people who are very verbose, very wordy, long-winded. A lot of the times they're using very sort of high-level vocabulary, very high-level jargon. They're trying to sound really smart and sophisticated. Effective communicators know the lay people have to understand it. It is no good if I have all this knowledge and you are listening to me like another language is being spoken. There is a disconnect there. The simpler the language, the better. Even if you just noticed, I found myself using the word circuitous, which I love that word. I'm a big fan of it. But I realized not everybody knows what it means. So what I did instantly, because I do have a high level vocabulary, I know that about myself. I read a lot. I instantly defined it, right? Oh, circuitous is long-winded, circular, right? Because I know I don't want to lose my audience, right? I don't want to lose my audience. I want them to understand this. This whole thing is not just for me. I know this. I made this. I never had to record this. It's for you. So what good is it if you don't understand the words coming out of my mouth, right? And if you've ever seen Rush Hour, it's a really great critique or commentary on communication because Chris Rock, I think it's Chris Tucker, says like, "Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?" And Jackie Chan is English is not his first language, so he does, and he also doesn't. So the simpler the language, the better. Sentences are focused. They are not all over the place. One main point is delivered at a time. Now, most of the time, people are not very cohesive in their thoughts, therefore, their language is not very cohesive. It's kind of all over the place. I've seen people on TikTok who are trying to like biblically analyze the Bible, and they're like jumping. If you're doing that, you are not communicating effectively because one main point at a time demonstrates you actually know what you are talking about, right? Every good orator, which is to say speaker, storyteller, stays on topic. If you look at any good songwriter, the topic, the song title is what they're working to explain in their lyrics. If you read any book, the title, right? Like I've got the screw tape letters here. The title is the main point, and the entire book is working toward it, right? Titles do matter, main points do matter. And there is something formulaic, which is to say, like bulleted and structured about good communication. So, one main point at a time demonstrates your coherence and clarity of thought that you are then coherently, succinctly elaborating on, right? So, like if you've seen any of my TikToks, the title of my TikTok is the thing we're talking about. This whole entire presentation is about effective communication, and every single point is going to be about effective communication. And I'm on this slide with this point that it's clear and not clever. The next slide's not going to be about that. The next slide's not going to be about that, right? The next slide is going to be about the next point, one point at a time. You don't have unnecessary things that you do not need in there. Your stories are relevant. Your stories are good examples. You're not sharing this story and then you have this story and then you finally get to the point, right? We don't have highly spiritualized language or highly academic language or, highly theoretical language. Um, People who are very technically proficient in like their field are familiar with the terminology of the field. But if that person is out of that field, trying to explain it to someone who's not there, using that language is ineffective. So, very, very infrequently do I use things like eschatology, right? Why? Because, yeah, that's part of systematic theology, true. But I'll just say end times discussions, right? Eschatology is the study of the end times. But if you don't know that jargon, if you don't know that language, it's just going to be distracting, right? It's just going to make you feel dumb. Like, oh, what's eschatology? Like, it's just distracting. So you don't need to use highly spiritual language or highly technical language or high like appropriated language. Like just it's not effective, right? So at the end of the day, if I ask you what did I just say, you can repeat it back to me without any issues. You're like, oh, this was the point you were making. And I will do that sometimes when I'm talking to someone and they're like, yep, got it. I'm like, okay, cool. What was I just saying? And I will find out if they actually were listening, if they actually comprehended it. And a lot of the times they'll say, oh, this was your point. And I'm like, that was not my point. That was not my point. So either I did not communicate effectively or you were not listening well, which also does happen. Communication's a two-way street. So I could probably make another PowerPoint that's effective listening, because we also don't do that well. Effective speaking. Um, Effective communication has to do with both effective speaking and effective listening. That is something I coach on. So I already have PowerPoints on it. I do help people speak and listen more effectively. It is a skill and it does need to be taught. It really does. One of the things that I always do for effective listening, you're either good at speaking or you're good at listening, right? One of those things is going to be more natural to you. So figure out which one it is and work on the other one. For me, nobody's shocked. I'm a good speaker. I need work on listening. Okay, so I had to do work on listening. So I have signals and things I do for myself to listen more effectively. So people should, if you've effectively communicated and they've listened well, they should be able to speak back what you have said without any issues. Because the thing that you're working toward is understanding, mutual understanding. This is my point. I want to convey it to you. You understand. This is your point. You want to convey it to me. I understand. Right? You're not trying to be overly intelligent just to prove that you are. Right? And I like this quote from the Bible. I've added some little biblical quotes here. The Bible has a lot to say on effective speaking and listening. If the trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who will prepare himself for battle? Which is to say, if the message is not clear, nobody's at the ready, right? If you are not proclaiming a clear message, nobody's going to know what you're talking about, right? So that is the first point. We've got a couple. So hopefully if you got a notebook, get a notebook. But we do have a fair amount, so get ready. Okay, so next point, the two. Effective communication is intentional, not reactive. This is where most people fall short because everybody is listening to respond, to react, and not to have an effective conversation. So my mother used to tell me, put your brain in gear before you put your mouth in gear. AKA, do not pop off at the mouth with the first thing that goes into it. Um, I think people don't understand how many different ways there are that you could respond to something. And when you get very good at intentional responses, intentional communication, you pause before you respond. You take a beat, you take a second. Sometimes you announce that, like, give me a second to think about that. You allow the processing to happen. You let them watch you process. In this day and age of communication, a lot of times you have time to pause and react. It's why I think comment sections are crazy because it's not instantaneous communication. It's not like you like said that rude thing just off the top of your head. No, no, you watched the thing, you took a moment, you decided this is what I want to say, and it's very rude and unacceptable. Odd behavior, right? If it is not helpful, then don't say it. Proverbs 17:28 is very good about this. Even a fool is counted wise when they do not speak. The default should be don't talk. Unfortunately, we live in a time where the default is pop off at the mouth. And that's very much going to be weighed against everybody. Everybody is accountable for the things that they say, speak, type, write, etc. It is why we are told in James 1:19, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And of course, if you look around, it's the exact opposite. Because we live in a time where right is wrong and wrong is right. But the biblical standard doesn't change. And the biblical standard is the best standard. So the smart thing to do is not to talk unless you are sure you've got something really valuable and important and insightful and helpful to add. So pause before you respond. If you're in a one-on-one conversation with somebody that's in live time, sometimes that pause you need to kind of account for. Like, hold on, what you said was really profound. I want to just think on it for a minute. Right? But it doesn't always have to be that. Um, if you are in a profession where you have to answer emails or text messages, those are not instantaneous forms of communication, despite what the people kind of push on you. You do not need to answer a text right away. You do not need to answer an email right away. Highly suggest you don't. There is a place for you to take your space. So one of the first things I had to learn when I was teaching was do not answer when you are upset. You're getting parent emails all the time, you're getting things all the time, constantly bombarded with stuff. And there was a district rule that you would hear back from the teacher within 24 hours. But sometimes that response was, "Hi, I received your email. I need to think on this. I will get back to you." And then you buy yourself more time to think on what you want to say. Written communication, you always want to read back out loud. Check it for tone, check it for biases, check it for convoluted phrasing. So if you have anything written, read it back to yourself out loud before you try to send it. Obviously, in verbal communication, it is more instantaneous. And so of course, your pause has to be more kind of calculated and intentional. But again, intentionality is part of effective communication. Unfortunately, most people are not intentional. Therefore, they are reactive. And if that's how they live their life, then of course that's how their communication is going to be. I find this to be very effective. Name the goal of the conversation, right? What are we trying to accomplish here? I actually have specific formats for specific conversations. So if I have a coaching container, it's going to be on Zoom. There's very specific things that I want that Zoom will allow me to do. If I have mentorship, I'll have phone calls. So even the medium, even the platform lends to how I want to communicate. Some things are better than others. FaceTime, I don't FaceTime with anybody who isn't a family or a friend. And so there's just certain things that when people hop on with me, they know the goal of the conversation. Because if you're in a Zoom one-on-one container with me, you're getting coached. Right? So the goal of the conversation can be both explicitly stated, like, hey, let's work toward this mutual understanding, or sometimes inadvertently stated by the way you actually go about it. The goal of the conversation means you have thought before what you want to get out of this conversation. That can be collaborative, right? Like if you and your partner are sitting at the dinner table, you're like, we need to have a conversation about our finances. Start there. You just name the goal, right? We want to talk about the finances. And then your husband or wife is like, well, what do you want to talk about with the finances? How we can save more. Bam. You just started with the end in mind. That's the goal you're working toward, right? That also is helpful because sometimes they're not in the mood for that kind of level of conversation. So, there are times I'll approach like my partner, I'll say, hey, I need to talk to you about business strategy. Can you do that right now? And they're like, no, I don't have the capacity or bandwidth for that. And I'm like, okay, can you schedule in a time we can talk about business strategy? That's the goal of the conversation. I want to talk about business strategy, but you can't do it right now. That's fine. Let me know when you can do it. Intentionality and not reactivity means you don't need to have this conversation right now in this way on your time because you feel a certain way. And most people don't have that discipline or skill. It is to be cultivated. It has to be cultivated. Comes from a very secure place of, I know I want to talk about this at some point. Let me know when we can do it. Because you matter and I matter both. What kind of words are chosen is like a whole other topic of conversation. And again, this is just a high level overview. Words that focus on the outcome and not the ego means that you have the me plus you versus the problem framework in mind. So you're going to use words that pull you and that person together versus the problem. So how are we going to figure this out? What can we do to make this better? Right? Your words frame, they are used to pull you and X person together. Now, if you've never studied language or literature in any depth, you probably don't think about your word choice a lot. But it is very important. The I voice versus the we voice either is just you're focusing on just me, I'm the thing that matters here, or we are the thing that matters here. And I learned this through a partner, an ex-partner now of mine who was like, you're always saying I, it's never we. And he was right. Because I didn't think about us like a partnership. I thought about what Michelina wanted. So I mattered. We did not matter. And of course, then when I started thinking about us like partnership, that was not the right call. But I learned. I learned quickly that was not the right call, right? So even something so simple as I versus we is us working together versus my wants. The language that you choose matters. Speaking with purpose and not emotion matters, right? People are not very good at this, unfortunately. Everybody's very emotional. And so they don't realize it. They don't think they're being emotional, but they are. And it bleeds out all over the place. And you know that because voices get raised, tempers get hot, things get escalated when people are emotional. So I say this a lot. If you want to go fast, go slow, right? Which is to say, if you want to yell, take a beat and force yourself to walk away. The thing that you are tempted to do when you're learning how to have better communication patterns, force yourself to stop and do the opposite thing. Because conversations need to be moving toward productive resolutions and not destructive, dividing escalations. Now, for those of us who are Christian, I will just say, before every and any conversation, I highly suggest consulting the Lord. Highly suggest. Father God, blanket this conversation, guard my mouth, guard my mind, guard my feelings. Ask this in Jesus' name. Lord, let what needs to come out of this conversation come out of this conversation. Be with me in this conversation. And one that I always recommend is order everything evil away from the conversation. So if you see an argument, in the name of Jesus Christ, Satan, I rebuke you. Get the demonics out of the conversation. You do not know who is listening in. I promise you. Okay? Because there is a spiritual, supernatural world out there, and they do thrive on verbal language. Right? So, just a heads up on that. Sometimes when things get escalated, it's because you haven't spiritually protected. If you have not spiritually protected your home and you call yourself a Christian, highly, highly suggest you anointing your home. What do? You take olive oil and you put it over the doorposts and you order everything away in the name of Jesus Christ. Everything evil, nothing demonic, nothing can piggyback, no objects, no people, no nothing. Order it away. Do it in your home, do it in your car, do it in your job. Order away the demonics from your safe spaces because you want them to stay safe. So if you are a Christian and you're not fighting this on a supernatural front as well as a very human front, I highly suggest that you do that. Okay, it's very important. That's intentionality there. So be intentional. 3. Now I'll just tell you, the first 2 I've gotten down. This third one is a place that I can use some work. Okay. So I already know how hard this one is. I struggle with it even now to this day. Okay. So effective communication is truthful and it doesn't have sharp edges. Now, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if you have sharp edges in your personality, your language is probably going to have some sharp edges too. So this is one I personally struggle with. Okay. It is important to give honest feedback without shaming, blaming, backhandedness. It is very easy for us to be passive aggressive. Women more so than men, but men too. Giving honest feedback without the passive aggressiveness, right? It really bothered me when you didn't do the dishes. Honest feedback. No shame, no blame, no passive aggressiveness. When you don't do the dishes, I feel like you aren't prioritizing me or our home. Honest feedback. No shame, no blame. What do most people do? I guess I'm the only one that does the dishes around here. Passive aggressive. It's very, very ineffective, right? A lot of the times people will accuse with their language and not even realize it. And it's because they are hurt or they are upset or it isn't in their control or they feel, some type of way and they don't know how to address that well. So it just verbal vomit. So honest feedback without shaming or blaming is super, super important. Um, that can be really hard to do when someone feels like they're criticizing you, right? So, you know, it is it can be a very tricky thing when someone is you're on the end of the verbal assault, right? And it is a skill. It is a skill to just defuse it and not get defensive back and critical back. Um, I will tell you, one of the first things I had to do was stop being sarcastic. I was a decade ago, I was so sarcastic, you didn't know if I was telling a truth or a lie. Yeah, I really appreciate your work there. You're like, I guess you don't, do you? I don't know. Right? Like sarcasm is the lowest form of wit for a reason. Sarcasm is a lie. So when the Lord really started working on me with better communication about 7 or 8 years ago, say what you mean what you say, do what you say. And sarcasm was the first thing that had to go. Had to go. And I was like, it was uncomfortable, actually. It was uncomfortable. Direct language is uncomfortable because it means you're revealing more about yourself. So instead of saying, I'm fine, it's like, oh, I'm having a terrible day today. I feel like a complete failure, honestly. People don't even know what to do with that kind of honesty sometimes. But we don't even let ourselves be that honest a lot of the time. And it does take courage to do that. It does take courage. And courage without being aggressive is a skill a lot of the times. So, the place where your girl personally struggles sometimes is the respectful language being used even when people are being corrected. Because I find it to be vastly inappropriate when people are trying to correct you in a setting where it's not appropriate to correct, right? And so um, a lot of the times it's an imbalanced positioning where people are trying to correct you and it's like you're in no position to do that. And so like unintentionally in my part for sure, but still it happens. Um, when I remind people that they don't have the authority to correct me, it makes them very unhappy. And it does sound a little harsh, and it's not meant to be harsh. It's just um, you're trying to come at this like you're my equal in this thing, and you're not, And that's the problem with the comment section. People who are commenting feel like they're on the same caliber as someone who produced the video. You're not. You're absolutely not. You're not. And that is why, like, there's a lot of confusion, role confusion. Know your role, right? But everybody thinks they're a peanut gallery. This is not a heckling, you know? And so it is a weird thing, social media for sure, because it makes the proximity feel closer than it actually is. And people seem to think that it's like they're watching a movie and they can just like have a conversation about it, but that's not what it is. It feels like it, but it's not. And so it's just an interesting dynamic now. But I have not yet fully mastered being truthful without being harsh. But it is important that we try continually, myself as well, to speak the truth in love. And again, hard to do when you don't know truth, you're not truthful with yourself, you don't know love, you're not walking in love, right? And so there's a lot to that it sounds easier than it is, to be honest with you. So one of the things that is important around truth is that it's not being hurled at someone, right? It's not being like backhandedly chucked at them. And so That is a skill I'm certainly still working on, but it's a skill that is necessary. It is necessary, right? So truthful, as true as possible, as objectively true as possible, right? Your feelings are not the truth, but you can be truthful about your feelings. Right, I'm going to say that again. Your feelings are not the truth, but you can be truthful about your feelings, right? Oh, this is too hard. That's not true. Okay, those are your feelings. That's your belief about the situation. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, right? And if you're seeing, like, if you're listening to this, you're like, wow, I'm struggling. Coaching is a great thing. Okay. Coaching is a helpful thing. So just do think about a lot of this communication gets better when you've cultivated self-awareness and your character into more of a Christ-like character. I mean, it is easier. So, um, if I can help you there, let me know. Effective communication, point the four, it is responsible. It is accountable. It's not trying to blame. Now, you can take it back to the garden. We've had ineffective communication since Adam. God goes to Adam, hey, Adam, where you at? What happened? Adam's like, oh, the woman made me do it. No responsibility there. No accountability there. Right? It's a very defensive way to show up. And responsible, effective communication avoids being defensive. I have nothing to defend here. Right? This is what I meant. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry if I did. I may not have been clear. Right? There's a willingness to clarify or repair. This was something I saw a lot when I was living with my dad, right? Because you have two grown adults who've lived by themselves for a long time, kind of coming in the same space. And I had to keep saying to him, listen, I don't want to fight with you. I don't want this to be a fight. I am not doing things to upset you intentionally. And I'm sorry if I've upset you. It's not my intention, right? And so, that willingness to clarify or repair, you keep peace as the forefront. Why? Well, I don't want to fight about a dish in the sink. That doesn't make any sense, okay? That dish is not more important than our relationship, right? It's really keeping the important things on your mind. And so you're not getting caught up in the small things. And then you can build trust, build a bridge because you're just being honest and accountable. But I will say, it doesn't mean you won't get upset. It means you handle your upset elsewhere. And then you come back to the situation at hand. There were plenty of times where the first reaction, like me and my dad, was anger, frustration. Because I'm like, what are you so upset about? Like, what do you mean? But instead of having that conversation with him, because there's no reason that's only going to escalate and make it worse, I would feel my feels. I'm like, I'm not happy right now. I'm upset. Go for a walk, talk it out with the Lord, come back and be like, okay, Dad, like I'm not trying to fight with you. Right? It is a process. There's an emotional regulation process that often needs to happen. So it's not an avoidance of your own feelings. Responsibility is not avoidance of your own feelings. Responsibility is accountability and understanding and awareness of what you're going through, working that out, and then coming back to communicate. Too many people are trying to figure out what they're feeling in the moment when they're feeling all the things with the person who upset them. It will never work, right? It will never work. So, it is important that you do, the pause, the first three things, right? The pause is very important. Intentionality, very important. So, and this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. The impact of what you say, your influence matters. So many people will be like, well, I didn't mean to do that. Doesn't matter. You did it. Your intent is not the only important thing here. Your intent is it's not irrelevant, but it's almost irrelevant. Your intent does not necessarily change the impact, right? And so responsibility in effective communication realizes that the impact matters too. The way that this landed matters also. Which is why when I got that TikTok comment, it was so weird to me because I'm like, so you're completely absolving responsibility? Like, oh, I'm going to plunk this down and it doesn't matter what you think about it? Like, that's weird to me. That's not effective. And then trying to teach me in the comments that the ineffective way is the better way to communicate is bizarre to me. Like, it's very bizarre to me. Like, I do not understand it. I do not understand it. And also, who are you as the source? Have you studied language? Have you studied effective communication? Have you done that effectively in your life? Because if you haven't, if you don't have at least 10 years experience of that, please don't try to teach me who does have 10 years experience of that. Right? It's weird. It's weird stuff. And so every single person will give an account to the Lord. I don't care if you believe in the Lord or not. It doesn't make him less real. Your beliefs do not mean, again, what is true and what is false. You're entitled to have your beliefs. Doesn't make the Lord less of a reality. He is real. You don't have to acknowledge it. You will give an account to him. Everybody does. All souls belong to God. And every single word, every single moment of influence, you will be held accountable for. I promise you. So it is important to be responsible down here to get a jump start. Um, Point B, 5, 6, you're aligned in all components of your speech. And what I mean by that is your tone, your language, your expressions match the content, right? Effective, well, not even effective. All communication is 70% nonverbal. More communication is based on your body language, your tone, and your expressions. So often people will say, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. What you said is not an issue. How you conveyed it is a problem. What you said is correct. How you said it is appalling. Right? That you want to be aligned in the word, the tone, and in your body. Right? I can be like, that was really nice. But if I'm like, that was really nice, did I convey the same message? No, I did not. Because my words, tones, and body is not the same. Me saying that's really nice and me showing that's disgusting gives a mixed message. It's ineffective. So you have a calm tone that matches what you're trying to convey. If you have a raised tone, you are probably automatically going to incite somebody's fight, flight, fear, freeze response. Most people do not react well to raised tones. Like if you have a naturally loud voice, which I do, you want to get good at moderating your volume. Effective communication thinks about things like that. Your body language is aligned, right? When I'm teaching here, I'm focused, I'm forward, my shoulders are facing you, I'm like alert. I don't look like this, right? My body language doesn't support this message. This is ineffective. I don't care. I'm slouched, right? Your body language matters. I used to do this all the time to my students, right? They would be at the desk like this, you know, and like talking to me. And I'm like, So I would get in one of their desks and I would do that. And I would say, ask me a question. And they would. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, like whatever. Right? Like your tone, your communication relies on body language. So many people need to control their face. One of the best things for me is that I teach primarily on camera now because my face gives a lot away. My face gives a lot. I have no poker face. Zero poker face. My kids used to know. My students used to know. They'd be like, "Hey, Miss Eichel, do we have a quiz?" I'd be like, hmm, right? Like they would just know, like, okay, we have a quiz today. Like they would know. All right, because I don't have a great poker face. I'm not a good poker face. I'm not a good poker player for that reason. Right? Your facial expressions are consistent with your intent, right? Now, again, if your intent is to be joking, not every conversation needs to be serious life or death, right? If your intent is joking, your face should match that, right? Like your tone should match that. You are intending to joke around. That's okay. Make sure it matches up. It's just your conversation, your communication is more effective when it is aligned in word and tone and body language, right? Now, here is the one of the best quotes. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? Whatever's going on in your heart, in your character, in your feels, will come out of your mouth. This is why, like, I'm a very good self and story analyst, is because I'm good at analyzing what you say and understanding the deeper beliefs and patterns and thoughts that are there. Like any good therapist, any good coach, any good analyst, they will be able to take the data. With humans, the data is a lot of times your language and deconstruct it back to where that's coming from. So many times people will be like, I'll make I'll have an understanding about someone based on what they commented. It's like, well, I don't think that way. And I'm like, well, your comment is demonstrating that you do think like that, right? Your language is in direct correlation to your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs all the time. And that's what people do not understand. You cannot divorce the language from the thoughts, feelings. You cannot do it. What you say is indicative of your mindset and your heart set and your beliefs all the time. So when people are like, oh, I was just joking. No, you weren't. No, you were not. You don't want to be accountable for what you said, but you were not joking. Every joke has a facet of the truth in it. So just be mindful. Be mindful that a lot of times your communication is betraying a lot about you for people who know what to look for. And this one is so important and very much lacking in this day and age. Effective communication cares about the listener. It is not self-centered. I am not the most important thing on this lecture. You are. The information conveyed to you is. I am just the vessel that it flows through. I'm not that big of a deal. You are important. So how did that land? How did that feel? A lot of times in my coaching, I'll drop sort of a little bit of a bomb unintentionally, and I'll be like, "How's that feeling for you? How is that? How is that?" Right? Or I watch their expression and I see them tense up or I see them get anxious and I'm like, "How are you?" Right? Because there is a burden to information that people do not take into account. Once you learn something, you cannot unlearn it. Once you find out information, there is now a burden that is on you. Well, what do I do with it? People do not understand this. Information is a currency. When you learn a thing, you need to process the thing. And every conversation is its own mini universe. And people do not understand this well. They really don't. So checking in with your listener is a good idea. Adjusting your language for an audience is a good idea, right? Your listener, if they are I don't know, a whole bunch of mechanics, then you want to talk to them in technical language that makes sense of what they understand, right? If I'm talking to a whole bunch of academics, then I'm going to use language that is reflective of academia. You want to adjust your language for the audience. I think it is the most important thing in good connection and good communication to allow for questions. Questions open up the dialogue. How does that feel for you? What do you think about that? What would you like to do about this? What do you suggest we do about this? How would you like me to feel about that? Questions, questions, questions. Become a questions master. It is very important in good communication to ask questions. It means you're curious, it means you're open, it means you're inviting. If you are constantly delivering things matter of factly, there's no room for them, especially in like a one-on-one conversation. Now, again, we're going to talk about this in the next couple slides, but not every conversation should allow or invite questions. Like it's not always appropriate. If it's a professor lecturing to the class and it's just a lecture with no questions, then don't ask him. He's not taking them. Or he's just going to have them wait till the end, right? Like, so sometimes there's a time and a place for questions. Certainly. And like at church, there's not if you're listening to your pastor, you're not in the pew raising your hand and like, hey, can you elaborate? It's not the time or the place, so there's that. But for the most part, in just your normal everyday conversations, you should leave room for questions, right? Now, again, if you're having a conversation with your toddler, that's they'll be asking you probably a lot of questions, and you're going to ask them questions they don't have the answer to. Still important to ask the questions. I'll do this a lot with people where I'll ask them a question that they may or may not have the answer to. I'll be like, okay, so I have a question for you, and you may not know what the answer is, and that's okay. I'm still going to ask it. And if you don't know, it's okay. I'll just make space for them not to know. It's okay. Right? I'm going to ask this question because it's on my mind. Or I will, this happens a lot in coaching. I'll have the things I want to get to, but I'll start with whatever they want. Like, so how do you want to start this? Or is there anything you want to tell me? And there's a security in that. People who are insecure in what they know do not allow for questions. The cult-like mentality. You can't question in a cult. In a good education space, in a good conversation space, questions are allowed and preferred and wanted. The Socratic method is my favorite method. If you know anything about Socrates, he taught by asking questions. It's very effective. Coming up with good questions is a skill. It's one of the things I consistently get praised for, and that's been for the last 2 decades. Like every single teaching evaluation, it was like you just ask great questions. All of my clients now are like, wow, that's a good question, all the time. And it's a skill. I mean, it really is a skill. It has to be cultivated. And the really important thing in good conversation is that people feel seen and heard. They don't feel managed. They don't feel like it's a task. They don't feel like they're part of a job. Even if they are, sometimes they might be. People feel seen and heard, and they feel like they matter, right? Now, again, I will say this, that is if it is a conversation. Sometimes it isn't going, they're going to feel seen and heard, but they're not going to feel like if you're a client and they're a therapist, you're not going to maybe feel like you're fully connecting with them, but you feel safe enough to know that your voice matters there, right? So there is a difference in positioning. We'll talk about it on the next couple slides. There's a difference in positioning sometimes that does change the way conversation happens. But it is important for effective communication that the message is received well. This is one of the things that the Lord really just nailed home for me and my friend last night. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up. And that's a tricky thing because there's a lot of ways to corrupt. Complaining corrupts, grumbling, slander, gossip, hate, frustration. There's a lot of corrupting talk, critical talk. And so if you work, one of the most effective things you can possibly do is if you work at if you have nothing nice to say, then don't say anything at all. If you work at that, you will be clearing Ephesians 4:29. And I highly suggest you work at that. I know one of the things that the Lord told me yesterday is that is to be the way. So already in the last 12 hours, I've been self-editing my own thoughts, my own conversation with the Lord, to not speak any corrupting talk. It is very tricky. Actually, I just did it there because what I was going to say is it is very difficult, but that's even what I'm at the level where I am, I have to, that's corrupting, right? To claim out loud that it's difficult is a corruption, is a speaking of a death. So that's why I shifted it. You guys didn't know, I'm telling you, I did it. I shifted it in my head to say it's tricky. And it is tricky, it is tricky. So you want it to be encouraging and edifying and empowering because that's speaking life. The power of life and death is in the tongue. Speak life, choose life. And that is a skill. And it is something that I will be teaching more and more on the better and better I get at it. But again, you can't teach what you haven't really done a good job coming to the standard of. And so I find it's probably true that I haven't taught about communication beforehand because it is something that I personally am even still being refined on. And I speak a lot, so probably I'll continue to be refined on it. So here's why I say positioning matters. Sometimes it is not always necessary or appropriate for these two things I'm going to talk about, right? In some cases, it is very necessary to have a call to action. In every single like coaching container I have, there's a call to action that needs to happen. Sometimes when you're just having a conversation with someone, there is no call to action. Okay. So this may or may not apply. If it does apply, then there's certain things you want to do. In a call to action, you want to have clear and defined next steps, right? And this is sometimes why people do hire coaches or therapists, or consultants or mentors or, analysts or whomever, because they have a more objective understanding of the path. So like when people come to me for mentorship in business or in ministry or whatever the case, if since I've already walked the path, I can say, okay, here are the next steps you're going to need to do, right? So it can be very helpful to have calls for action. If you and your partner are sitting at the table and it's like, hey, let's have a conversation about our finances, that might be a place where it is appropriate to have a call for action. Like, okay, well, I'm going to save a fourth of my check. You're going to save a fifth of your check, and we're going to, come together in this way. Very clear, very defined next step. When you have clear, defined next steps, you very often have defined ownership and accountability. This is my part. This is what I'm going to do. This is your part. This is what you're going to do. This is why people sign contracts, right? Contracts very formulaically and methodically lay out the expectation. These are the things you're going to do. Here's the time you're going to do them. The problem is we have a lot of social contracts that are nebulous. They are not defined. They're kind of all over the place. And so one of the things I'm always loving to do is defining things out. I like to define terms. I like to really narrow things down because language conversation can be very abstract, and I want to do my part to make it very concrete. One of my personal skill sets and professional skill sets is taking things that are very abstract, literature, life, heaven, supernatural, your journey, your personality, conversation, and making it very concrete. This is how we do it effectively. It's just the Lord has blessed me with that skill. It served me well when I was teaching. It serves me well when I'm coaching and teaching and ministering. It just does. So yes, defined ownership, defined everything is a really helpful thing. Again, if you have a call for action, you want to have timelines and expectations because then it's an easy way to benchmark if you did or didn't do the thing. There's a thing you may know, it's called a SMART goal. A lot of people talk about this. SMART being specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and in a time frame, right? SMART. It is important to do if you are setting goals to have it be that way. Like, oh, I want to lose weight. Not an effective goal. Not smart. Not a smart goal. It's not specific. How much weight do you want to lose? I want to lose 10 pounds. Cool. Measurable. How do you know you lost 10 pounds? I'm going to track it with measuring my gut and measure and stepping on the scale. Cool. Attainable. How are you going to do it? I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week and I'm going to watch what I eat. Cool. Well, watch what I eat is still not specific, but fine. Realistic. Is 10 pounds a realistic thing to lose? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Timeline. I want to do it in 1 day. Not realistic. I want to do it in 2 months. Very realistic. Probably we could up it to 1 month, right? Like that, smart. You want it to be smart. So, that call to action should be specific and measurable. The timelines should be specific. Expectations should be very clear because people like to know what is expected of them. People like to know what they're getting into. I heard it said, and I agree, do not go into a meeting if you don't have an itinerary or an agenda. If you don't have an itinerary or an agenda, it doesn't need to be a meeting. It means you didn't think about it beforehand and you're going to waste people's time. So, like, number one in life and in business, if you don't have an agenda, don't call a meeting. People want to know what happens. People want to know what is expected of them. And again, very effective communication will result in movement, something actionable, something that makes sense that they can do. It will help them to feel accomplished. It'll help them to feel like they're moving towards something. If someone leaves your conversation confused, you were not effective in translating what you wanted to say or mean. And one of the most important actionable things you can do, I tell people this all the time, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't give wishy-washy answers. If you want to do it, then say yes. If you don't want to do it, then say no. If you decide that you're going to do it, even though you don't want to, then you have to do it with a good attitude. You said yes, don't care if you like it, you did it, go do it. So that is a skill that most people have to work on. When I was actively working on letting my yes be a heck yes and my no be a F no, I it had to be very black or white. And then I got better at it and I like started putting in the gray of like, no, I don't really want to do this, but I am going to do it. And because I am going to do it, I'm going to show up and be helpful. Because really your influence in a space matters. So you want it to be helpful and not harmful, right? So calls to action are not always necessary, but a lot of times it is the hallmark of, wow, we made some progress in this conversation. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in a business meeting or in a professional setting, right? It could also be you have a family meeting because you want to divide the chores up. Well, guess what? You call your 5-year-old to the table, your 8-year-old to the table, your husband to the table, and you. And it's like, okay, who's doing what? What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? Let's figure this out. At the end of it, you've got a chore chart and everybody knows what they need to do and how often they need to do it. Right? So it doesn't need to be just in business. It can be an effective household running. It can be an effective partnership. You can make calls to action be very effective in your personal life too. I tend to like them. I think they're super important. That's just me. And the last, be teachable or coachable. I'll tell you right now, most people are not. Most people think they are the authority in the space just because they're there. It is very important to know your role. If you are the lesser of any pairing, then you want to be teachable or coachable. So often people are so surprised because they think I'm not teachable or coachable. But that's because they've never seen me be a student or a client. I'm actually a better student and a client than I'm a teacher or coach. I really am. I love to learn. I actually like to listen. I actually like to have points of consideration. People are always shocked by this because often where I'm meeting the people is when I'm in an authority in the space. Like I know this content on my page in this way. You are not doing that. You're not an authority on my page. What are you doing here? You're just a troll in my comments. So a lot of the times I get accused of not being teachable or coachable. That is not true. You don't teach well if you're not a good student. And you don't coach well if you're not good at being coached. Right? So you are a better student, a better mentee, a better disciple, a better client first before you are elevated into positionings that are higher level. So, what we all want to do is be open to feedback when we're the lesser pairing, right? So, if I am, I'll give you an example. I helped somebody move last week. I'm very good at moving. Okay. I am very good at it, but that is not my move to manage. So, I defer to their judgment. This is your move. This is your thing. I'm just here to help. So, you tell me what you want to do. You tell me where you want me. You tell me what you want to do. And they were like, "Oh, go pack the kitchen. Oh, go do this." And I'm like, "Okay, great. I'll go do it. No problem." Right? Because it's not my move. It's not my place. Even though I have the skill, and I do, it's not my circus, not my monkey. So tell me what to do and I'll do it. Now, if you go into a space and it's not your place, but it's clear that they're not effective at running something, then you want to ask, "Hey, can I step in and help here? I have a skill in this. I'd love to help out." A lot of the times they'll be like, "Please do." Sometimes they'll be like, "No, I got this." And it's like, "Okay, I'll just sit back and let you do what you do." Right? So when you're in the lesser positioning, which again, people don't understand positioning, that's probably a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but positioning does matter. And when you're in the lesser, you want to be open to feedback. When you are in the higher positioning, it doesn't mean you're better than, it just means you have more of the authority here. You want to be willing to restate or reframe things, right? So if you try to convey something and you see that the person looks kind of puzzled, you're like, let me think about how to say that better. Right? I didn't convey that well. Let me think about how to say it better. Right? That's it shows your own reflection in the moment because you care about the listener, right? That's important. That's good stuff to do. So it is a good skill to be willing to like reframe something or restate something. And the number one thing that I think everybody needs to cultivate is curiosity rather than defensiveness. Being curious is really a good thing. And we come out the womb curious. Children ask so many questions. They want to know so much. They want to understand. Adults don't. They're like, "Just tell me what to do. I don't want to think about this." Curiosity means your neurons are firing. Okay? There's some movement in the gray matter. You want that. Defensiveness is usually very egoic. Like if you're getting defensive, it means your ego is involved in some way. People who are not egoic don't really get defensive. They don't really care. Like, okay. All the time, people see me do it a lot where it's like, "Oh, well, you're so this, that, and the other thing." Okay. I know I'm not. You're entitled to think that. Why you think that? I don't know. Why do you think that? Right? Like, it's just when you really are kind of secure, you're good at curiosity. You're like, "Huh, why is that?" When you really are effectively communicating, change and growth are on the table. Change and growth are on the table. The process of refinement's on the table. Change, growth, refinement are parts of choosing life. You want to change and grow as you get older. That should be a part of the natural process. You should always be evolving. If you're not naturally evolving, if you're not working toward that intentionally, you will naturally stagnate. You will decay. Change, growth, refinement is part of intentional cultivation. You are intentionally cultivating those things. And of course, if you love discipline, you will love knowledge. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. Why? Because when you learn, you don't know a lot. For every one thing you know, there's like a million you don't. There's like a million you don't. Right? So if you, and this is important, like disciplining is a part of being a good disciple. And you cannot be a good disciple without coming under some sort of authority, right? The disciples were under the authority of Jesus. They were not apostles until Jesus was gone and they graduated to become sent ones. And then other people came under their authority. We live in a place and a space that we have different positionings. Who is the authority here and why? Right? And so it is important to get good at discipline because it means that you will be a better communicator. Discipline is an important thing. Now, can no man can tame the tongue, but you sure can practice self-control. You can. And self-control and discipline go hand in hand. So that's kind of an overview. And I apologize, that's a little lengthier than I wanted to go, but that's an overview of some very effective means to good communication. So here is a small little test, right? After important conversations, take your inventory of yourself. Was I clear? Now you can actually ask somebody that. Like, was that clear? No, you want to be careful. You don't want to be offensive sounding, right? Like, was that clear enough for you? Like, no. But was I clear in what I tried to communicate there? You just want to be earnest. Like, you're genuinely asking. You want to know. You want to ask, like, was I truthful? Was I fully truthful there? I've been reflecting on a relationship I have, and I was like, I'm always upset with them because I feel like they're lying to me a lot. And I thought to myself, and I said, you know what? By allowing some of these behaviors, I've been lying for this entire relationship. I haven't been truthful. I haven't been truthful enough. Like the things that I find you doing are appalling to me. Have I said that? No, I haven't. So I have been not entirely truthful. So I've even been reflecting on how true I've been to things, right? And then of course, was I respectful? Now, most people aren't nowadays. People are not respectful. People are not respectful. They're very disrespectful. Respect is a whole nother, that's probably how to be more respectful is probably a PowerPoint I could make, honestly. It's probably a lecture I could make. Was I respectful? Right? Was I more helpful than harmful? Was I kind? Did I have only like productive things to say? Did I treat them like a human being despite our differences? And then if it makes sense, do we have next steps? Like, do we have a place to go from here? Now, on one hand, if the answer is no, it doesn't mean the conversation was a flop. It just means there's more depth to go to. There's more discussion to be had. One, or two, it means it was a conversation that doesn't need next steps, right? So you want to kind of take that fourth one with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, the most effective communication will create a shared understanding between the people who are talking. There will be dignity on both sides because we're both human, we both matter. And there's a responsibility that occurs and a good action that can come from it, right? And so all that to say, why I was so confused at this comment that was trying to state that if somebody comments and you don't understand it, that's okay because it's not for you, then why'd you say it? That's not effective communication because effective communication creates a shared understanding, right? Mutual understanding has been unlocked. That's the goal of any conversation you have. And a couple things I consider that I'd love to give to you. Every conversation is its own universe. Every time you talk to someone, I don't care if it's the barista, I don't care if it's your boyfriend, I don't care if it's your professor, I don't care if it's your boss. It is a whole universe. You bring your whole bag of stuff, they bring their whole bag of stuff. Every time. Treat every conversation like it is a unique, precious thing because it is. One. Two, think of every conversation you have as a meeting of minds where you bring yourself to the table, they bring themselves to the table, and the table is there, and you just put your stuff on it. You don't have to pick up their stuff. You don't even have to pick back up your stuff. It just needs to be there, and you're both looking at it, right? These are very effective kind of techniques that I like to use that I have found to make conversations just better, right? Because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, you need to weigh well your words. You need to weigh well your words. And especially if you are a Christian, you are held to such a high account because if you say that you follow Christ, if you claim Christ, then you need to look and sound like him. And that's why I put James in here, James 1:26. If any man among you seem to be religious and bridles not his tongue, but deceives his own heart, the man's religion is in vain. It does not matter if you say that you claim Christ if you spew a whole bunch of satanic hate and nonsense. You do not claim Christ. You are like a Pharisee. Your lips profess and your heart is far from him. I'm quoting Jesus when I say that. Right? So it is so important that your lips and your heart reflect Christ. Otherwise, your faith is in vain because you're not acting like Christ. Your words are not lifting, they're not speaking life, they're not being empowering, they're not being encouraging, right? And so it is very important to weigh well all your words. And if you have nothing nice to say, then don't say anything. This is how we get effective at communication, right? This is how we do it. So, probably I could make maybe more part twos on all these things, but for right now, I think this is a lot to work on and work through for the common person. Like these are all skills. These are all things that need to be cultivated, and conversations have to be practiced in relationship with other people, right? So pick one that you're like, wow, I'm really struggling with this. Pick one thing and work on that, right? Actionable step for you guys. I'm putting on the coaching hat here, taking off teaching, putting on coaching. Pick one thing. You've watched this whole thing now. If you're at this point, pick one thing that you're like, wow, that's the big one. Or ask the Lord for help to point it out to you. And then start just working on that in your conversations. Don't try to do it all at once. It's not going to work. Okay. Pick one thing and work on that. Speaking the truth in love, asking more questions, being more considerate, aligning your language and your tone. Like there's so many things you can work on, and you've got the rest of your life to get good at all of it. Okay. But for right now, pick one and move through it. And of course, if you want to accelerate your growth, then by all means, see if it makes sense for you to join the community, makes sense for you to hire me as a coach. Because if you start working on it to a depth level, it will go faster, right? If you're just kind of working on it with yourself, it goes a little slower. It still can be done. You plus the Lord can get stuff done, but it's faster when you've got more people invested in the growth work, And so, if effective conversations and effective communication is something that you want help with, it's faster when you hire someone who's been through it for sure. When you do use resources, yes, definitely. So if I can help you in any way, by all means, I've got a whole YouTube catalog that's all free. Go check it out, grow your awareness. I have guidebooks that will help you figure out yourself, your character, your journey. That is helpful because out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Those are on Amazon. Go check those out. They are interactive. They are meant to sort of accelerate growth over time. And then, like I said, if you want to join the community, that link is on my link tree. It's in the comments. And if you are interested in coaching, then just either DM me or comment coach, and then we can see if that makes sense. But ultimately, this is something that you want to work to cultivate. It is very important. It is just very important. And you will be weighed in the balance for what you say and what you do, right? If you've studied Revelation with me, in Revelation 20, the book of life gets opened, and so too does the book of works. Okay. And so it is important. It does really matter. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that is good insight. And I appreciate you taking your time to watch it. And if I can help you at all, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video.